Addiction is a very, very intense topic that not a lot of people have been through, but some people have. And our guest today is Paul Harrington, and he is one that has been through addiction. And he's here to talk about how he turned his trauma, addiction, betrayal, revenge, all of those things into fuel for rebuilding his body and mind. So, you guys know that I share a lot about my story, and this topic hits home for me because I also survived addiction and I clawed my way out just like this man did. He wrote a beautiful memoir called Beautiful Chaos, and we're going to talk about that later on in the show. Before I let him have the stage and introduce this beautiful man, I would like to say thank you to Spreaker and iHeartRadio for your sponsorship. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Do not forget to like and subscribe before you leave today, but stay tuned till the end because this episode is going to be packed with juicy, juicy stuff and really amazing things. A story of resilience, of power. It is really, really good to see you, Paul. You're coming in from the UK.
Indeed,
How
I
are you,
am.
how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Thanks. It's a lovely introduction. Thank you. It's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
very
I
good.
just I get it. But let's first, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Who is
My-
Paul Harrington?
I am. I've had an interesting life. I live in East London. I have a young son, a 15-year-old son, and I've had it. I've brought up as a in a foster child into a very loving English family, white English family, and I've had an interesting life. I've been involved in many eras. I was involved in the rave scene when in 1989. I was involved in. I did quite well in the property scene, and then I got quite involved, dangerously involved with cocaine, which kind of grip me quite bad. It's quite a long period that journey was. It was about 15 years. It's a long period, a long period. It's a funny thing because I think, you ever seen the movie Click? You know the movie Click with Adam Sandler? I think whoever invented that, who made that movie, I think must have been into cocaine because I think that is a real, it's very similar to that. I know I'm diving straight into cocaine, but it reminds me of the pace because everything is so fast. You know, the addiction I've had with it was so rapid. But I think really from addiction, I think looking back now, coming out of it, I can look really back as a child. I think there was elements of me as a child which I, looking back now, which I think, okay, I could recognize that side. I think there's certain sides of me which as a child I was like chocolate. I mean, I'd just go to shops. I'd eat sweets, so much sweets that I'd run out. When I'd finish the sweets, I'd go to the shop and steal more sweets. I wanted more, more, more. So I think there's a trait. And one thing I think, which I've discovered, because I'm not, I think for me, it's definitely genetic because I was fostered. So my brothers and sisters, they're all genetically related. And um, there was something different with me. And I think there's something in my genes which have that, which I think in some ways it can be a good thing and a bad thing. It depends on what really you're addicted to. And I think yeah, there were certain things which were good and certain things were bad. And I think cocaine was definitely not one of the good. I think if the devil could create any kind of substance, then the cocaine would be his substance he'd create. I think that was definitely the devil's drug. I think the
Wow.
behavior, yeah.
So why don't you bring us back to childhood? What was childhood like for you? And when did you start noticing those addictive behaviors? What kind of addictive behaviors?
Um, my childhood was fantastic. I was fostered into a family which really, I don't like to use the word fostered because they were my brothers and sisters. My mother had three children. Um, White English family, but I went. She had three of her own children. She didn't plan to keep me, and I came in, and then she had another three. So I had three brothers, three sisters, three boys, three girls. I was slap bang in the middle, and we lived in a beautiful little place called Epping, which is in Essex, surrounded by forest and rabbits and dogs and stuff. Um, and it was just lovely. I mean, my childhood was. I did have to deal with quite a lot of racism. This is back in I was born in 1966, so this was like really back in the day, and it was pretty rough then. But my family growing up with, we went on holidays and stuff, and but do you know what? It was the times when my parents were Catholic, so we'd have, because there's so many of us, we all bought eggs because we have Easter eggs. So when it came to Easter, there would be like 9 eggs, and I would eat all of my eggs. I have 9 eggs till I'd made myself sick. I couldn't stop. So that was probably a little sign of I just couldn't stop. Even though it made me sick, I wanted that fix of the first maybe 2 eggs that I had. It was after that I wanted more and more and more. And after I'd finished that, then I'd start sneaking around and nicking my brothers and sisters' eggs. So there was that side, and then when I even with sport, I'd get very addicted to sport. So everything that was a better side, and I could control it. I think when I first started really noticing when things started getting probably with it's a weird thing because I in 1989 there was I don't know how it was in the States, but I don't know if you heard in the UK there was a big we were into there was a big football violence problem. I was into this football hooliganism stuff, and
Oh
then there
yes,
was
the crowds that would get into big brawls, right?
well, Margaret Thatcher was going ballistic, go about like these hooligans and that. And one
Right.
minute, it was a big thing. And there was no internet and no mobile. So we had like 3 channels, BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three, and Channel 4. So everybody and the newspaper was like, the football, they're disgusting hooligans, they're
Yeah.
terrible. And so everybody wanted to be a hooligan, and everyone was into being a casual. So we were in Burberry, Aquascutum, and Fila, and but then suddenly this thing called ecstasy came out, and
Yeah.
ecstasy, it it literally within weeks it swept through the country, and it got rid of all the violence because with ecstasy it's a love drug, it's a serotonin, it make everyone's hugging again. And I remember going to this club in Leabridge Road, and I was a Tottenham fan. I was proper into the Tottenham. I'm just a young and just into this whole scene. And it was everyone's it was kind of like a mass hysteria. Everybody was quite into the same thing because you didn't have so many outlets. It was like very tribal then, and because everybody had similar news. It wasn't like now you'd get the same stuff.
Right.
I remember seeing these people dancing, and I just couldn't. I looked at it, I thought it was so odd. Couldn't believe it. And this was right at the beginning. And then I remember a friend of mine convinced me to go to this club called Legends in Old Burlington Street, and there was a guy in the door called Denzel, and he was the most notorious picker. And my pal, he said to me, "You've got to go up to Kensington and get dressed. You can't wear all that Burberry Aquascoop stuff." I was putting this stripy jacket on, and I was thinking, "Why am I wearing?" I took this thing the first time. This is my first drug ever, and I was a lot of my friends went traveling to Southeast Asia. So I was kind of a little bit, I'd gone to America, came back. So I was got a bit of a loose end. And I took this dove, and then it just blew me away in an amazing way. I mean, there's certain drugs which are, I'd say, I've never condoned it, but it definitely opened up portals. It opened up minds and the feeling but, and MDMA is not an addictive drug, but what was addictive, it was weird because the feeling is incredible, incredible feeling.
1000%.
But what was addictive for me was the scene. So I got addicted to the scene. And at the
Got it.
time, I was a state agent. I was working for this company, and I was raving so hard. I was going out on a Monday, go to Legends, then I'd go to this club called a Milk Bar on a Monday. No, go to Legends on a no, go to Limelight on a Friday. This was a church, and it was like I remember going to this church and thinking, I can believe in this church. Everyone's dancing, everyone was on these, and it was a whole movement. And the football scene got wiped out. The whole football scene got wiped out because everybody was down bouncing. Now the newspaper are going,
Yes.
these mad raves, what are they doing? These bad people. We go, no football violence. I remember seeing guys that we were fighting with, everyone's hugging, and it was just a love drug, and
Yep.
everyone was dancing and raving, and it was incredible. But I couldn't get enough of it. So I was going out on a Friday, going out on a Saturday, going to this other club called the Park on a Sunday afternoon, going to a milk bar on a Monday. I left work because I couldn't, work was getting in the way of the rave. So I got
Yeah.
addicted to the scene, not the drug. So it wasn't the drug that was addictive, it was the scene.
Sense
Um,
of community, the sense of belonging, the ability to receive and give love in such an open way. And that's so rare. Like that doesn't happen. So I could feel that. Like I can just, I know in my experience with MDMA, it was like everyone was just, oh, it was so easy to talk to people to be like, oh my God, I love you. You look beautiful.
yes,
And you know,
yes,
nobody cared. It wasn't like, oh my God, you have that wall that comes up. It was just like, but thanks, I love your hair. You're beautiful too. And then you'd
yeah.
hug and then you'd
The
move on to the next
hugs,
person. And then you're
and you meant it.
dancing. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes.
And you really
And it's
meant
like,
it. When you were hugging, you'd ring your friends up. I love you, man. I love you. You know what I mean? It's the love
yes.
hugs. It was.
Yes.
I
I
think
could see why that would be addicting.
but it wasn't the drug. This was the weird thing. The drug wasn't, and the scene. What I mean, that was probably when I remember thinking then that I didn't have it. You didn't get a mental come down like cocaine was a mental come down, but it was a physical drain, and I felt a little bit off center. But one thing I do know is I was in my early 20s then, and I think your body's so much more capable to. I mean, I took ecstasy later on, and it was never the same because I don't think your body can take it. I call it tinning. I get this tinning feeling when my brain just couldn't handle it. Whereas then it was new, and I do think that the drug then was there was a particular drug called the Dove, and it was very clean, and it was just there was nothing really, you didn't have that gurning. There wasn't any gurning going on. And now I've seen people. I spend a lot of time in Ibiza, and you see a lot of jaws talking to the ears. It's a lot of, it's all a bit gurney, and also it's,
Yeah.
I think being young, probably your face doesn't get so contorted. Whereas I think getting
Yeah.
someone a bit older, it's not the most prettiest thing seeing someone dripping wet and gurning and coming up to you trying to give you a hug. But that was probably my first. It was an addiction, but the scene was I was addicted to that scene, and
How did you get
I'm
introduced to cocaine?
well. This is an interesting story. I got through the scene with ecstasy, so I got through that, and I remember it got out of control because it sounds very dark, but I ran out of money. And I realized things were going a bit mad because me and my friend decided it would be a good idea to do this robbery. Not that we did it, but my brain was getting a bit twisted. And that's when I
Yeah.
decided, Paul, what are you doing? Like your parents, your family, what gonna go? And I decided, I remember I disappeared and I've said to everybody, and it was easy to disappear then because there was no phones and no mobiles. So I moved completely out the way because I realized it was getting out of control. I remember coming back into it, and my friends were still doing ecstasy, and then I was taking bananas and Mars bars and convincing myself of having as much fun as then I clearly wasn't. And then after that, I stopped doing any drugs whatsoever, and I started working. I did start quite. I built up a property empire. I did quite well. And I remember this was in my 30s, coming from my late 20s was quite a lot of partying. And I thought, right, that's it, stop. And it's extreme stop. It wasn't like stop, that's it. You're not doing that, Paul. Now you need to get your head together. So I started, I did very well. I did quite well. I built a business up. And then it got to my 40th. And it's so weird. It seems birthdays, I think, are really, really significant. Every birthday is significant. And a girlfriend of mine at the time, Suzanne, she arranged this party. She hired out this warehouse in central London. It's supposed to be a secret party. And I went there, and and I remember having a bit of a thinking, my God, Paul, you're 40, you're turning 40 now. So I was 40 years old. And I was thinking, oh mate, you know what? You've done all this hard work. Now, just someone offered me a line. I knew cocaine was around then, and I did a line of coke, and it wasn't really, it didn't really, it was just nothing. I did a line, I was there, but I think the cocaine is such a seductive, sneaky little drug. Not a little drug. Oh, I really detest the drug now. Now I'm really out of it. I really know. I know all its little tricks. I know every little trick it's
Yeah.
got. So I did a line, And I think what that did, it just opened the door.
Yeah.
The door was open. It was open, and I thought that's it. And then I'd go out, and suddenly everyone around me was doing coke. It suddenly I could see
Right.
coke. Remember, I don't know if you when a kid used to play that game when you would be in the back of the car and well, you don't have any devices, you look for red cars, and then you see red
Red
cars
car
everywhere, like
everywhere,
everywhere.
everywhere.
So it was the same with that. Suddenly I'm going out and I'm thinking, yeah, do another line, do another. And it slowly seduced. It wasn't a sudden thing. It was slowly seducing me in. And
And the
it,
ritual, the like bill rolling up, the fact that it's secretive, the fact like the whole thing.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't out of control though. This wasn't out of control. It waited. It waited. It was dormant. It's like a dormant drug. I was doing it and doing it and doing it, and then it would be either good news, it would be bad news. I think my mother passed in 2015, and that's when it really it kind of looked with cocaine, which I've learned, and you'll know this yourself, it will celebrate you with you and go, come on, Paul, you know what? You've had a bad time. No, you've had a good time. Let's party. Oh, you poor thing. Do you know what? Need to disappear. You need to detach yourself. You've had a bad time. So it took that time where I remember it was just like you know what? Me and you, mate, come on. You've had a bad time. You need a blowout. You need to detach yourself. And you know
God,
yourself that,
and you've been drinking too much. This will sober you up. Have a line. You'll feel
yes.
better.
Oh my God, that one. Oh my God, that is such a terrible one. Have you, I mean, you've seen, if you've gone out with people now and seen how mad that is when you've seen people that are drunk and then you see they're drunk. So they're drunk so much. They're drunk as if they're having a stroke drunk. And
Yeah.
then suddenly,
Five
they
minutes
do the
later,
sign. I mean, what is that doing to
boom.
your brain? Straight
Yeah.
up. So there's that one.
Crazy.
And that's when it started getting really out of control.
God. Yeah.
And then oh God, it got to the stage when it got deep into me, when it's really got you, it's really got you. And it wasn't period. And it
Like,
would go through a period. Yeah, when it got me, got me. And then then it become a real battle. Now there's three types of users, and you'll know this. You get the ones that can take it and leave it, which I find, they'll come to the house. Yeah, I've had a gram there from, I'm like, what? How can you leave that in your house? Doesn't
I
even make
know.
sense,
I
right?
literally would bow
Yeah,
down to
yeah.
those people. I'm like, who the hell are you? Are you
I'm in
some kind of god
shock.
or something? What do
Right.
you mean you can walk away from this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that shocks me. Then you get the functional users, which basically
Yeah.
accept the fact that they've got a problem, and they do maybe a gram a day or 2 grams a day. A lot of them, they've got partners. The partners don't know. They can be working with it, and they get
Right.
by with it. They're the functional users. And then you get the bingers, aka myself. And I'm sure I got a feeling you might have been a binger. I can just, yeah,
A little bit of
maybe
both.
go. Right. Well, the bingers are the ones that are never doing this again. This was the worst thing in the world. Never do it, never do it, never do it.
Yes.
And then you
This
go
get
around it.
yes.
And I've worked out, I've really thought about it, and I call it like looping. So you imagine you're in a stadium, right? And you're in this stadium and you're going round and round and round. So with a binger, and I think even in most people with alcohol, many substances, you have a problem. You're stuck in this loop. So you're going round and round and round and round and round. You go round and round. You're never doing it again. And then you do it again, and you're just going round and round. And my binging got so dangerous. I would go out, and I actually ended up calling my demon, my Hector demon. I had a name for him. His name was Hector. I gave him a name, and my friends would know him. They'd go, Hector's out. They'd know Hector was in. And it's such a narcissistic demon. It's so me. It was so much about me, but it wasn't me. It was the opposite to everything I am. It was
Yeah.
just, it was, it, and then you get I mean, I'd go out, convince myself I'm not going to get on it, and I'd go out, do a line, then I'd order an 8 ball, and then I'd be gone for a couple of days, and
Right.
then it becomes a matter of really trying to survive those 2 days. Um,
All the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and
totally.
over again,
Yeah.
expecting a different result. And that's what I
Yeah.
picture when you were like in that loop. That was the loop I was in. It was like,
Yeah.
I'm never doing this again. Eh. Oh my God, I'm doing it again because it's going to make me feel amazing. And it was
Yeah.
just this effed up cycle of chaos that
Yeah.
never changed. In fact, it just got worse. Like it got
Yeah.
worse and worse and worse. And it was
Yeah.
like, but in my mind, I'm like, it's going to make me feel better. But it was all about escapism for me. I don't know what it was for you. Was it about escapism? Like you were trying to numb yourself? Um, I don't
No,
know.
I don't think it was that. I think
Oh,
it was just
what was it?
the pure, it's the feeling you get, the excitement. It's excitement,
Yeah,
the excitement of that
the
thing.
adrenaline.
Do you know what the most exciting part? And I really understand, I'm really wary about happiness. And when you get happiness, I think happiness is a dangerous pursuit if not understood. Because the happiness I got was when my phone would ping and my
Oh,
drug dealer's outside. And I'm like,
yes.
I'm so happy.
Yes.
And that was the bit. It's outside. And I go outside, the
Oh
motor will
my,
whiz up, and I've got it. And I don't even say anything to my friends. I'm marching into the toilets. I'm whacking one up the right. Boom. And I'm marching out. And all my friends are now like, everyone's feeling. And then you sit down and you're having the most nonsense conversation. It's like the conversation of who can talk the most nonsense. And it's like, it's my turn, it's my turn. And you have that. And that was the beginning. And it's kind of, that bit's kind of all right because you're still communicating, sort of. And then it
sort
gets to
of.
the
Yeah.
stage where you're like, you'd give your back, you'd start handing the bag, someone nicks some out your coke, and then you're off. And then I want to go. So I don't want to be around anyone. I don't want
Yeah.
to see anyone. I want to be by
Yeah.
myself. And that's when the carnage would start. And then it would go on and on, and I'd want more
Yeah.
and more and more to the stage where my nose would be bleeding. My heart. I had a stage where I'd be literally, my heart would be pounding to the stage where then I'd be trying to smoke to try and calm it down.
Yeah.
Then I'd find the stage. Then you will know this. It's an awful lot of effort because it gets to the stage where you've got to try and stay alive. There will be so much carnage. So I would occasionally have a little window of sanity, and I'd manage to I'd get tiny windows and throw it away, and then I'd
Right.
come back to myself and go mad. It was like my Hector demon he'd be waiting he'd be in this cage, and it would be the access to him to get out of the cage would be alcohol. So you'd have a drink. I'm never going to do it. Never going to do it. And as soon as that third drink, fourth drink, those cage doors would ping open and he'd come out.
Yeah.
Come on, we're not going to go mad this time. Just me and you. Paulie, come on. You've had a bad time. You've had a great time. Come on, just one. Just get one. As soon as you said yes, as soon as it's there, you cannot get him back in. He's going to get his feed. He needs to be fed. And that was it. And then I'd go on and on and on, and it'd be dangerous. And then it got really dangerous because then I'll be taking Xanax to try and calm myself down,
Come down. Yeah.
and then
That's so hard on the body.
The
It's
Xanax would bring
crazy,
me
right?
down, and then once I've taken the Xanax, then I would get back on it again. So I'd be like
Yeah.
seesaw game, chain smoking, then I'd be drinking vodka, heart pounding, think I'm gonna die, have a shower, come out, straighten out a little bit, I'm all right, get some air, cold shower, take a Xanax, then it would be Valium, anything to
Yeah.
try and so I can push it. And just really what I was doing, just trying to, I didn't want the reality to come in, reality. And then eventually, then I'd be out for 2 days, go home to my missus and my son there, walk through the door, couldn't talk to her, didn't even talk to her, just walked straight up, couldn't talk, I can't talk, or call me, I need an ambulance, or just anything, just so I couldn't talk, go in, and then the shame of it. Yeah. And look, I think me giving it a name, I think was a good thing. A lot of people, I think, look at it as, I think when it's I mean, because it was just something I had to get rid of. So by giving it a name, I think, in looking back now, I think was a good thing. I understand it was me, but by giving it a name and everybody recognized its name, I mean, it's just the insanity, as you said. It was an insane, horrible, horrible, horrible time, and it was scary. And this went on for on and off for 15 years. So it would have its times when it was I'd have it under control, and I thought I've got it under control, and then it would come back. You can never ever, I don't think for me, just think I've got it under control. It has to be annihilated. It has to be gone. You can't just go, I'll do it occasionally now. I don't do it so much. No, it had to go. But it got, I mean, there was times where I think I got quite close I mean, my heart rate. I remember I
Hmm.
was with a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine. She had one of those heart monitor things, and my heart rate was on like
Mm.
240, 250. You need to slow down. Like people I would be with would be scared to be around Hector because he was just a demon, an
Yeah.
absolute demon. And I really, there's a guy I see on Instagram now. I can't remember his name, and he's living this at the moment. And it's upsetting when I see him because I know he's in the front, he's in the trenches of it, and he's got this addiction. His nose has collapsed, and he's a binger, and his nose collapsed. He's now having to wear hearing aids because the cocaine now is affecting his hearing. He must be in his 30s, and I can see the pain and the battle he's going through because he just wants to get rid of this demon. And I think some people I think looking back at it now, I think there's certain people that just have that thing in them where it's very dangerous. I think if you look at someone with, I think looking back, even if you look at like even at people that are like, if you look at Mike Tyson when he was doing it, when he was fighting, he must have been addicted to be as good at what he was in boxing. He must have had that an addiction. You've got to have
Yeah.
that addiction ability, and I think that he had
High
his problems.
performers, right? High
Yes,
performers, the
Tiger Woods.
addiction to like the ADHD brain, the really creative type, I think. But high performers for sure. Um, I feel like they're just chasing that. They want to feel good. They want to do their best. It's like all or nothing.
Yes.
The perfectionists, the people that, yeah, I don't know. That's what I think of. For me, that's what it was anyway.
Well, I think you're right, and I'm looking now, and I see my how I am, and I know now. I'm not comparing myself to Tiger Woods and Mike Tyson, but I know that anyone that's got that trait of of obsession, I think there's a similarity to obsession and addiction. I think there's just the obviously addiction is obviously got a much worse PR, and rightly so. But there are similarities. I know that now because I'm obsessed with I train and I'm not I don't train normally. I know that I know I think I recognize the way I train to I can see the similarities with the addiction with cocaine. I know
Yeah,
the difference is I'm the user and I'm the supplier. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
supply, I know, and my brain is not got Hector is not in the control of
right.
the bridge being in my brain. I'm in control of the brain of my brain, so I can control the dose. But I am addicted. I get up, I train. I have to. It's not about going to. I can't not go to gym, and I have to say, Paul, you've got to slow down. I've got data now with my Whoop data to say, Paul, you're on the red. So it tells me you can't train today. So I got stuff, and my brain is because it's not chemically got all its chemicals
Dude,
in it,
yeah,
I can control it. It's like the chariot. I've got control of the reins,
yeah,
whereas cocaine is just I can really see the similarity. Even when I'm training, and I'm doing sets. I have to slow down. I want to do more. I want to do more. I'm thinking,
yeah,
Paul, mate, you got to
yeah,
stop. You can't carry on. Just chill
yeah,
out. So there's a similarity which I've only learned from being out from understand. I've learned so much more about cocaine and addiction by stopping the substance, and it's now I can see patterns and I can see things
yeah,
and I can see similarities. I can see right, and I can see people that would I could say you that person needs to be careful. I could see someone who's young and think, you know, I could see a pattern where they need to be careful, but also that pattern could be very good. They could be take it into a positive thing. So I think if it's in the right area, if it's if people don't,
yeah,
it's more. I think they just switch the name of it as an obsession rather than an addiction. I think they are
Yeah.
probably cousins. They're probably similar. I think obsession and addiction are definitely similar, apart from one of them you've got the reins and one of them you haven't.
Yeah. Paul, I need to know, how did you get rid of Hector? What happened? What was the turning point for you that you finally said, you're staying in this cage and this is gonna, I'm changing my life?
Well, I got involved. I think when you're I had quite a big property empire, and I had quite a good income coming in, so I was partying and drinking and sniffing and not really. You attract serpents. So when you're in this place and you're partying, you attract bad
Yes.
energy. So I was attracting serpents, and I had a particular so-called friend, and it literally he got me involved in a project, and and I found out there was embezzlement, and he was got me. It basically brought me down quite rapidly. I was married at the time. My wife left me. My son's mother was so I was going to court, family court, and I went into really, really, really bad depression. Now, one thing I also know about cocaine, which is really dangerous, is when you're in depression. I was in an awfully dark place. My houses were getting. I've lost an awful lot of my houses. I had a particular house in Camden. This is just over COVID, and that house was getting repossessed. So I was spending quite. I was in a house by myself, and everything was falling apart. And Hector was like, "Paul, come on, mate. Everyone's left you. It's just me and you. Come on." Me and you. I was thinking, you know what? You're right. You're right. I wasn't even fighting him anymore. I was actually so down. So, it worked for a while. I'd sniff a few lines, sniff a few lines. It's now by myself, no one around, no warm-ups, no having the competition, talking nonsense competition, just me and Hector. And I was sniffing and sniffing, and I tell you what, I didn't want to. I would stay. I would stay in. God, it's quite heavy. I'd stay in this world of, and it would stop. All the pain and all the stress and the depression would go away. You know this because you get this bubble, it would be
Hmm.
gone. And afterwards, I'd have this come down. So I would take Valium to
Hmm.
get rid of the come down. I remember then I'd go into this sleep. I'd sleep for 3 or 4 days. So I'd go into these deep, deep sleeps, dreamy, weird sleeps. And I loved being in these sleeps because the reality was a nightmare. Then I'd come out and have to deal with it. The phone would ring. I'd be scared of the phone ringing, scared because everything was bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. I couldn't see my son because of COVID, so I was just there, and I was just in this very, very spiraling place. And then I'd come out, and then the thing with depression and really dark depression, with cocaine, you, you you lose your auto cruise, you lose that safety net. So you've got no safety net. So depression, the come downs are awful anyway, as you know.
Hmm.
But if you've got problems and you've got depression, then it becomes very dangerous because then you've got depression, and everything gets magnified. So I've got my houses are getting repossessed, my wife's left me, my son's mother's taking me to court. I've got all these problems. My life is falling apart. Everything's falling, and the only thing I'm doing now, I'm coming out. I want to stay in dream world. I'm in this dream world of dream world. Then reality comes up, repossessions, bridging companies, everything's falling apart. Then my brain starts thinking, "Do you know what? You need to tap out. You need to tap out." And I'm starting thinking, what are you thinking? I'm forgetting these dark, dark thoughts because it's like there's no safety net. You know, you've got the trapeze, you jump off. There is no safety net. So your come downs are now beyond bad. And your brain, my brain is trying to, in a bizarre way, trying to save me, saying, mate, you need to do something about this, or you need to tap out. So my thoughts now, I feel, what are you thinking? But the thoughts are getting darker and darker and darker. And I went into such a dark place. And I hear this now regularly about this rock bottom. And then my son, I hadn't seen my son. Eventually, I managed to get my son come round, and I hadn't seen him for a while. And I was at the bottom of the stairs in my house in Camden, and he saw me, and I was sitting the stairs, and he must have been 9 at the time, and he grabbed hold of me, and he wouldn't let go. And he just grabbed me at the
Mm.
bottom of the stairs, and he was just hugging me. He must saw something in my eyes. He saw something. My face was just this was stress in my face. And I remember going to bed, and I've I don't mind admitting I cried a lot that night. I cried and cried and cried. And then a week later, I got a friend of mine who he rang me. He's a guy called Jay. He lives in Ibiza, and I had a house in Ibiza. I lost that, and he I told him, look, man, he'd done the 12 steps. Now I didn't do the 12 step, and I said, look, I'm really struggling here. And he said, listen, you need to get out of London, wherever you are. And there was a little window in the COVID time. So I flew out to Ibiza, and he said, just come out. And he said, stay in this campsite. I said, stay in a campsite, stay in a campsite. I'm Paul Harrington. I don't stay in campsites. But I did. He stayed in this campsite, and it was Airstream. It sounds so romantic and beautiful. And there was no one around. There's a few hippies in this campsite in the north of the island. So it wasn't like Ibiza. Ibiza was dead because no one there. There was a little window. And I've brought up very Catholic, but I think I feel much more spiritual now. And I think sometimes the universe, can intervene. I felt that must have been an intervention because it was Isaac, my son, was probably the time I knew I had to change. That was probably the time that I knew I changed, and then the opportunity came, and I knew I had to do it. I knew that my son probably was the pivot, the pivot really for me to make a change. And then I stayed in this campsite, in this airstream, and it was by. See, I love being in where I live in London. It's been near the river now. I've completely changed on what I love about planet Earth, and
Mhm.
I it was this airstream, and it was right by the sea. So you had the sea there. You could listen to this ocean coming in, and there was this sand and trees. There's a couple of hippies, and that was the in fact that was the time. And then I started walking around, and I can honestly say to anybody who's got a problem, I'd say the earth, there's something about naked earth, sand, sea, trees, um, anything that is away from concrete, even if you're with concrete, even being at night and walking at night where there's foxes running around, just peace. Because I think what was happening, that there was so much chemicals going wrong, and I was just upset. I was brokenhearted. My wife had left me. I was going through course. I was stressed. I was worried about, everything. And the only thing I had really was to escape was cocaine. And I think that the being away from it is just try. I wasn't present. I think finding being present, and I don't think I'd been present. I don't think I'd been present for an awful long time, even when things were going well. It was party, this, that. I wasn't really present. I didn't really know who I really was. I think I probably knew who I was probably when I was younger, and then just get caught up in this is I'd say that in that loop. So that broke the loop. I
Mhm.
think when I was in the loop, in the loop, in the loop, and coming out of the stadium, I call it a stadium loop. I think when you're in the loop and you're in the stadium, just going round and round and round, whether it been alcohol, whether it been ecstasy or cocaine, which was the most devilish, horrible one. And just came out of the loop, and then that was the beginning of being out in the world and find. And do you know one of the things I really remember, and it's the weirdest thing. I remember being in the caravan. And I remember looking down, and there was ants, and they were just ants walking along, and they're picking up bits of bread. And he's walking. I remember looking at these ants. I think these ants gave me more therapy than anybody could have done. I was just sitting there for days, and I used to leave the bread out for them and just watch these ants just doing their thing.
Mm.
Just a simple, simple thing, and it
Yeah.
just made me. It centered me. In fact, that was the genesis of really probably me writing. That when I started writing, and then I
Yeah.
started. I started exercising, and there was a I started cycling. I stayed there for a while, and that was the beginning. It wasn't completely I wasn't completely cured, but I certainly it anchored me and realized, do you know what, there's something else you can do here. You've got all these problems, but you need to find peace. I think peace is something I really I crave now. Peace is something I crave more than anything.
Yeah, I can relate to that statement. Just being at peace, calm, grounded, nervous system happy, relaxed. I'm so grateful for that, and I don't take that for granted anymore. That roller coaster, that up and down, that you talked about it, like my body was somewhat reactive to that because I could feel those feelings that you're talking about, that coming down, how
Oh,
awful that is. The like not sleeping and like just the sweat, like everything is just chaos and it's everything swirling around you.
oh,
And once you
yeah.
got a hold of that though and changed it around, it's like that's when little things started improving. That's amazing. And you wrote this beautiful memoir. And that you just said the catalyst to you getting sober was you're starting to write. Tell us about that.
Well, that was the beginning. Look, I don't know where that came from, and I used to take I used to take pictures of myself just going on with to try and convince myself not taking cocaine. I'd take pictures of myself after the 2 day benders. So I've got pictures of myself
Wow.
just to say, look what you're doing. And I've got pictures like showing of the carnage and I'd leave recordings. So I'd kind of document stuff. But I'd kind of started doing I don't know why. I started doing bits of it when in Camden when I was going through this depression. I don't know where it came from. I just started doing it, and then the real genesis came from Ibiza, and I think for some reason it wasn't really for any reason. I just started writing. Just wasn't really based on it, more based on how I was feeling and what was going on, just to try and center. And then it just started to it went in unison with exercise. So I found writing exercise. They were kind of working together. And then I sort of got to the stage where I sort of did quite a lot. And then I reached out to a ghostwriter a guy called Nicholas Brooks and said to him, look, I've got this thing I'm doing and I think maybe I need some help and how it should be structured. And that's when he said, look, Paul, we need to start from the beginning of your life. I told him about my life and, I had quite an unusual, my mother was married to a Chinese man, had an affair with my Ghanaian dad. And obviously I wasn't her child. So it was quite an unusual beginning. And he said, let's start from the beginning. And I found that really helpful because one thing is for sure, if you're going to write, then your brain needs to be clean. You can't write, you
Hmm.
can't access thing. And also, as I was writing, and going through this process, I started being able to access more things mentally. I think when you're out of the stadium, out of the loop, I mean, it's not just cocaine loop. I drank a lot loop, but you've got hangovers. I don't drink, I don't have any poison in my body at all. So you just have access to stuff. You have access to
Yeah.
things I didn't know that were there. I'm much
Yeah.
more spiritual. I'm much more connected myself emotionally. So that was writing this book kind of has been a really important. It's just even having we're here talking now. I mean, I cannot imagine 10 years of what on my mind that I'd be sitting here having a conversation about a book. Who the hell is that? That would be Hector would be like, absolutely no way. That cannot happen. It's funny, it doesn't happen, but it's been a really important part, and I think it's helped me. I think for some reason, some reason for I'd take pictures of myself, and I'd have these notes. And for some reason, I've been writing this book. It's gone on for about 6, 7 years now. 6 years. It started for around just around COVID, but it's been important tool I think for me to progress because it's taken so long as well. It's been like a long period,
Must have
and
been it's really cathartic for you because you're probably piecing together things that you have a lot of aha moments. And
yes,
as you're writing, you're
yes.
like, oh yes, this is why. And then you write about it and then you can process it and release it, which is
Yeah, totally.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of discovery. I think when that when you're at when you just not having a hangover. I cannot think of anything worse than a hangover. I just think
Yeah.
it's a weird thing because I've become more solitary. I enjoy my company now. Before I always had to have people around. Not that I don't have people, but I enjoy my company. I love being by the rivers. I love being just I love nature. I love I go I love being I love my own company. I enjoy my company. Now I can travel and do things, whereas before it's all be like parties and this and that. So there's been a shift there, and I suppose in some ways, I think not being in that loop, you sort of there's been discovered like I go to bed at I know I'm quite boring. I go to bed at like 8 o'clock. My whoop says to me, "You've got to be in bed by 9 o'clock." It's very very demanding. So I go to bed at a time, and I wake up at around 5 or 6 o'clock. I eat like, I mean, very, very clean. I eat like my main meals by 3 o'clock. I'm done with food. So I fuel up before then and I train and I do, so everything's sort of in that sort of obsession way. But
Routine, yeah.
I've discovered, I think that I've been, it's been enjoyable finding out who I am because I don't think I really knew who I was. There was a time when I
Hmm.
was in America. I lived in America I went to America when I was 21. I lived in Santa Monica. And I remember once, I remember really clearly, there's two times when I was, my friends went to Vegas and I was in Santa Monica and I remember running down to Venice Beach. I remember sitting down on the beach. I was 21 years old. I just remember looking at the ocean, sitting there, and I was thinking, oh, this is the first time. I've got three brothers, three sisters, mum, dad, dad. There's always noise. There's always stuff going on, which is great. But there was never time where I've actually been at peace and thought. And I remember that time thinking, mate, there's no one around. You've actually got to think. You've got to do what? You've actually got to think. So that was the one time. And the second time happened when I did too much. I was partying too much to ecstasy and I moved away and disappeared then. And then the most important time was Ibiza, and then it's just I think a lot of people don't ever get to find out who they are. They're just constantly in this thing. I've got friends of mine that are stuck in this loop, and I can see they want to come out of it. But it's just interesting. I always do a thing now on a Sunday where I will leave my phone at home and I will not answer the phone. I will not, the phone doesn't get answered. I don't read books. I don't do anything. I just walk by the river and I try and spend the whole day out with no phones. I remember years ago, Sundays used to be a day where all the shops were closed and nothing would be open.
Yeah.
It's Sunday, and I've sort of liked to sort of try and stop noise. Just today, it's a lot harder than you think. Try and taking a day off with no phone. You can tell everybody, look, Sunday is, you tell everybody, don't ring me on a Sunday. Don't worry, I'm okay. What if something happens? What? If you're going to be fine, it's just one day. Because remember, years ago, we never had phones, so we'd be out all the time.
Yeah.
So I try and do that just to be in my own mind. I like to be in my own mind and just sort of think and find out stuff and just know who I am. I've discovered who I am, and the fact, I'm here talking to you now, and I'm talking about a book. There's something which I never thought would be. Would never even know that person existed. I really wouldn't.
Tell us when your book is being released and where we can find it.
Uh, Probably looking around February next year. We're just finishing
Okay.
off now, and just to obviously doing the podcast and stuff. It's finished now. We're just sort of tidying it up, but it'd be around February next year. But
Beautiful.
it's uh it's been it's been enjoyable. It's been funny because I did a podcast with my ghostwriter, so that was really enjoyable. We'd sat down. It's been interesting his journey on it because he's quite younger than me, and he was sort of telling me like how sort of going through. He went to Ibiza for the first time and he was doing stuff, and it's been quite a journey. Really enjoyable journey.
Wow. Well, I am so happy that you were able to get rid of Hector and be here today to tell us your story and to inspire so many of our listeners just by sharing. You're really affecting a lot of people in a positive way. So thank you so much for being here. Do you have any last minute thoughts from today's conversation that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, if anyone has got a problem, I think just understand that, that you just that coming out of that loop. I think the loop thing is a good thing to feel when if you know you're in it. It's just to understand that you're in it and try and get out of it. And if they've got, I think also one thing I think would help would be to name. I think when you name it, I think the big problem is with addiction is the guilt. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt and shame, and I think that that demon is really giving it a name helps. I think helps to get rid of it. I think that really helps because it's not really. I know it is part of you. It's not. It really is not, and you need to get rid of it. And by giving it a name, it can help. I think separate. I think too many to combine sometimes that doesn't. I think can be. It can make it hard. I think by naming it, I mean it worked. I don't know if it would work, but it certainly worked for me. But yeah, yeah, that's it really. Yeah,
Amazing. Well, thank you, Paul, for being here and sharing your story.
brilliant, fantastic. Can I mention my Instagram?
I would love that.
Beautiful Chaos, 1966. You'll catch me there, and there would be lots more about my story and bits and pieces in there.
Well, maybe you'll come back and share more.
Most definitely, most definitely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Been a pleasure
It
talking to you.
has. It has. And to our audience, addiction is a real thing. If you or anyone you know is struggling, please do not struggle alone. Reach out, get help. There's a lot of resources out there. Paul's story is one of resilience, and I'm grateful that I got to sit down and share with him today. And I am also grateful for you. It is Friday. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Until next time, my name is Lisa Urbanski with The Advisor. Bye for now.